Remember MapQuest? The good old days when you would print pages upon pages of directions the day before your road trip? And then on the day of your road trip, you would finally reach your destination after several wrong turns and gas stations later? You may have forgotten about them, but they are still the second largest map company in North America, only beaten by Google Maps. Despite that, today they are simply just a shell of their former selves. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, they absolutely dominated the map market. Back then, MapQuest was a verb like Google. You would often hear people saying, "I'm going to MapQuest it." But nowadays, most people don't even know what MapQuest is or forgot about it. So what happened? How did this mapping giant become forgotten in less than 20 years? So here's the top 6 reasons why MapQuest failed, and we're starting right now with number 1, which is people had to seek it out. MapQuest wasn't a stubborn company that refused to change as technology evolved. They did launch an app and improve their web service as well. But the problem was that their competitors Apple Maps and Google Maps came pre-installed in the devices. And while these services may not have been better than MapQuest at the beginning, it was a lot more convenient for users. Over the past 10 years, most people use their phones for navigation. And so even though there was a MapQuest app, most people just preferred to use the Apple Maps or Google Maps already pre-installed instead of going to the App Store and downloading MapQuest. And this gave Google Maps and Apple Maps a lot more exposure, and eventually people forgot about MapQuest. But people download apps every single day, and it really isn't that big of a hassle. So it really wasn't that hard to seek out, but for people to want to seek it out, it must offer something a lot better than the competition. And the problem is that not only was MapQuest not better than Google Maps and Apple Maps, but it actually started to have inferior technology. Google had their stellar street view where you could see streets as if you were actually driving through them. And Apple Maps had their intriguing 3D flyovers. While these 3D flyovers didn't really do much to improve the navigating experience, they did garner a lot of attention. While all of this was taking place, MapQuest still didn't even have real-time traffic congestion monitoring, which could have actually been something that separated them from the competition. For example, if MapQuest was able to offer the most reliable or the shortest route, then there definitely was reason for people to seek it out over Apple Maps or Google Maps. But without any key features like these, there was really no reason for people to waste more storage on another navigation app. And soon enough, people pretty much completely forgot about MapQuest. And one of the biggest reasons that MapQuest is lacking in technology is that they lack resources. The whole company is only made up of 100 employees, and they don't have that much capital to spend compared to their competitors. Google sent out hundreds of cars and spent millions of dollars in creating those Google Street View images. And no doubt, Apple also spent millions in creating their own maps. MapQuest doesn't even make their own maps. They actually buy from a Dutch company called TomTom, which you guys are probably familiar with. Furthermore, Google can spend millions of dollars on marketing and fix any issue very quickly at any time of the day. And there's only so much that MapQuest can do with 100 employees during business hours. This is just an issue that any small company has to face when competing with a much larger competitor. Maybe MapQuest would have never become as big as it did if there were bigger competitors from the very beginning. On top of this, MapQuest has more ads. For example, I just opened up the MapQuest website and I was greeted with 5 ads. A Citibank ad in the top, a Comfort Inn, Priceline, and a University of Arizona ad on the left side, and a Photoshop Lightroom ad on the very bottom. Now, this is not one of the main reasons that people stopped using MapQuest, but it still is impactful. Not only was MapQuest not better than their competitors, but you had to deal with a lot more ads while visiting their website. If you go over to Google Maps, you don't see any pop-up ads. And this is a huge problem for MapQuest. Their competitors were able to offer a map experience that was much less cluttered. And the reason for this, again, boils down to that MapQuest is a smaller company. Even today, MapQuest is a profitable company, and the issue is that they solely rely on the revenue from these ads to make money. They have some other methods, but this is their major source. For Google and Apple, Maps is a very small portion of their business and they don't really need to make money from it. Google and Apple are even okay with losing money in such sectors because they are more concerned with long-term profit and that you use all of their products than a little bit of money right now. They use their other huge businesses like AdWords and YouTube for Google and the iPhone sales for Apple to compensate for these losses. I'm not saying Apple or Google is losing money by making maps. But what I am saying is that they aren't opposed to losing money, and as a result, they can always stay one step ahead of smaller competitors like MapQuest. In the end, MapQuest is forced on displaying these pop-up ads while Google and Apple are not. And this negatively affects the user experience for MapQuest and drives people away from using it. To make matters even worse, MapQuest has much less public implementation. I'm not talking about the local bakery that pins out their location on Google Maps. I'm talking about the over 1.1 million companies that pay Google to use your maps. And for hundreds of these companies, Google Maps is the core of their business. Without it, they really couldn't do anything. And as a result, they end up paying Google billions of dollars. You probably haven't thought about this, but think about the millions of people who use Uber and Lyft and Uber Eats, Yelp, Airbnb, and TripAdvisor. What do all these companies have in common? They all have millions of paying users and use Google Maps at the center of their business. And while Google Maps is free for the average users like you and me and small companies, you can bet that these huge companies are paying Google a lot of money in order to use their maps. And it's not just these market leaders that have to pay Google to use their maps. Think about all the big companies that need maps to make money. It is very likely that most of them use Google Maps. Really, the only significant company that uses MapQuest is Papa John's. Even Apple used Google Maps until 2012. As it is evident, Google Maps has a wide range of implementation across a lot of huge companies, which brings in billions of dollars of revenue for Google. And this key difference is really what is causing MapQuest to lag in every other segment, such as the user experience and better technology. And finally, you have the negative stigma associated with MapQuest. MapQuest was a small cartography company that started in 1967 as a subsidiary, and it is often associated with people who are older and are not as good at using technology. On top of this, people also often associate MapQuest with a slow and annoying travel experience. Even though MapQuest has improved significantly nowadays, when you hear the word MapQuest, most people think of the time that they got lost in the middle of nowhere, and they are happy they don't have to deal with that anymore thanks to Google and Apple Maps. The problem is that most people don't know how MapQuest has evolved today, and they still associate MapQuest with the old annoying travel experience of the early 2000s. And this negative stigma associated with MapQuest is one of the biggest reasons that people moved on from MapQuest very quickly and why the company is where they're at today. But as I said, MapQuest is still profitable and they're working very hard to see if they can dominate the market once again. If you guys like this video, then make sure to drop a like and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more videos just like this one. Until then, I'm Hari. I'll see you guys on the next one.